Well, with more on these numbers and what they could mean for the governing Liberals, we're now joined by Dan Arnold. Dan is the Chief Strategy Officer with Pollara Strategic Insights. Dan, good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Happy to be here. Nothing like more than talking about Alberta politics. So,
and numbers, and the numbers, which you love.
Polling and all that.
Yeah, but listen, for people who don't know, obviously you also headed up research for Prime Minister Trudeau, all his 3 successful campaigns. So you as a Liberal, that hat on, when you look at these numbers in Alberta, when the next election comes, whenever that may be, fair to say that you're feeling optimistic?
Yeah, optimistic. I think it's fair to say, the Liberals right now are seeing a bit of a surge of support in Alberta. I wrote a Substack post where I kind of compared this to a Chinook in Alberta, which is kind of when the weather heats up and it gets really warm, which is what's happening now. The Liberal numbers are heating up, but sometimes a week later it's back to -30 after the Chinook comes in, right? So I think it might be short-lived, but polling I'm seeing, the polling that's out there in the media, would definitely have the Liberals at historic highs in Alberta right now. They haven't ever gotten over 30% in an election in the last 50 years in Alberta, but most polls have them over 30% in Alberta these days.
Yeah, and to your point, in terms of decided voters, like hitting 40, which, quite frankly, grabs attention whenever you cover politics in this country vis-a-vis Alberta and the Liberals. But I saw your Substack last week, and what also struck me was more than just the support you're tracking and others are tracking with the Liberals in the province. You also talk about the Liberals having a chance of winning as many as 12 seats. Now we boarded the top 10, and it's right there in front of us. What can you tell us? I mean, Edmonton Centre, Calgary Confederation, those are Liberal already, Eleanor Shevsky as well as Corey Hogan. But the rest, you see those?
Yeah, I think they're in play. Certainly at these numbers, and obviously if the numbers do subside a bit, then they're probably playing more in 4 or 5 seats. But if they're at high 30s in Alberta, or 40% in Alberta, yeah, definitely 12, 13 ridings could be in play. The thing about Alberta is, you look at Edmonton, in provincial elections, the NDP sweeps it every time, right? The NDP gets over 50%, well over 50% in every riding in Edmonton. So these are people who are progressive. Maybe in federal politics, they've got some stigmas with the Liberals in the past, but Mark Carney is a hometown boy from Edmonton, and I think he's talking like an Albertan. He's doing things like talking about pipelines and working with the government there. And I think, there's certainly a sense that he's one of us. And, that potential is there, I think, at least in those 6, 7 Edmonton ridings. And then a couple Calgary seats as well, too, where they're always competitive, that certainly could be in play.
Yeah, might be in play. So is it the fact that they're viewing Mark Carney as speaking like an Albertan, being an Albertan? What is it that's driving this?
It's a couple things. I mean, look, the Liberal numbers are up a bit nationally everywhere. And I think there's the Trump, the Davos speech, and all those factors. Alberta's not that different from the rest of the country. They care about those same issues. But I think the unique thing in Alberta is, one, Carney is the hometown boy. And it's one thing just to wear an Oilers jersey every now and then, but the thing that matters, I think, is that he's actually making policy changes that seem like he gets Alberta, right? We talked about the memorandum of understanding he signed with Danielle Smith. He certainly has spent a lot of time showing Albertans that he's live to the issues they're facing. The other thing that I think is interesting right now is that everyone I talk to back in Alberta, my family's out there, so I visit, I talk to people there. The separatism debate is really starting to take over now. That's what people are talking about, Alberta separatism. There's probably a referendum happening this year. And I think as people start to focus a bit more on that issue, that may be having some bleed over into federal politics right now. The voter groups where the Liberals are growing the most in Alberta are immigrants, older Albertans, university-educated Albertans, and those are the groups that are also the most worried about separatism. So I think there might be something there that's having an impact that is very unique, obviously, to Alberta and not the rest of the country.
Yeah, unique, as you say. But you reference it a little bit, and I do want to talk about the durability of this as well, because we showed your Alberta numbers. Let's take a look at your national numbers, beginning with decided voters, because when you look at decided voters, you see a commanding lead for the Liberals there, double-digit over the Conservatives, and near 50% for the government right now. But if you were to include all respondents, and that means that includes people who are undecided, well, the numbers do drop for the Liberals. So I'm wondering about the durability of this kind of trend, what you're observing. What can you say about that?
Yeah, the advice I always give people, and even though I'm a pollster, I shouldn't tell people don't put too much stock in the polls because then I'd be out of business. but I think it's fair to say horse race polls between elections, don't put a lot of stock in them because people are not, voters are not thinking day to day about who I'm going to vote for. And, it's not something that is consuming them. During an election campaign, they actually are shopping around. They're comparing the options. They're maybe looking up some policies. They're exposed to ads. Like it's a much more live environment where people are. Between elections, this is kind of background noise. So yeah, right now I think there's some background noise that moves them towards the Liberals. Maybe they're a little bit more worried about Trump than they were a couple months ago. Maybe they heard something about Mark Carney giving a big speech that was very, supportive of Canada's role in the world. And I think some of those factors might be pushing them a bit more to the Liberals. But yeah, like you get into an election campaign, things can change very quickly. And I think, that's the Liberals, I think they'd have to be careful about trying to go to an election right now because I think you could see things shift pretty quickly there.
Yeah, I've got 30 seconds, but I do have to ask about this because there is that debate. Should the Liberals take advantage of this kind of polling lead, which when you look at decided voters in your numbers, you can see some logic behind that. But when you dig deeper into the numbers, there are still big challenges for this government in terms of being seen to perform well and in terms of affordability, in terms of jobs, in terms of the economy. So what do you say to that question as to whether or not the Liberals should pull the trigger right now and try to get another mandate?
It would be a risk. I think it'd be a lot easier to get a few more floor crossers and win some by-elections to get to the majority. But you're right, like we just put out a poll today with Pollara, and the majority of Canadians think the cost of living has gotten worse in the years since Mark Carney became Prime Minister, right? There's some structural problems there. And as you get into an election campaign, people start to focus on different things. Maybe today they're thinking about Trump, but 3 weeks from now they might not be. And I think there'd be a big risk if the Liberals went into a campaign.
Okay, Dan Arnold, always fascinating to talk with you. Thank you for this. Appreciate the time.
Anytime.